You've probably never wondered where the god of Marvel Comics lives because you might have thought, well, he just lives in heaven. But it's actually not that simple because the Marvel cosmic hierarchy is really complicated, especially because a lot of real-world religions are represented in this world of Marvel as actual, non-negotiable beings. And it doesn't help that Marvel makes things even more complicated by personifying pretty much everything. Death, eternity, law, order, etc. But there's one being that's more enigmatic than anything. The one above all. And even though this character isn't something that we know all that much about, we honestly know more about his domain because it's very similar to our own. The first real peek that we've gotten of this was when the Thing was possessed by Dr. Doom, and Mr. Fantastic was forced to kill him so that he could stop Doom. Hoping to bring the Thing back to life, Richards noticed that there was still a spark of life in Ben's body, but most of his consciousness had moved on to another dimension. Was it heaven? Who's to say? But the remaining Fantastic Four used a device to travel there and find out for themselves. When the team arrived, they found a vast plane and several challenges before they reached Ben's soul, which was in his human form instead of the rock creature that he had resembled for decades. Yet what they all discovered is that this was actually a sort of in-between of existence, and Ben Grimm was actually being locked out of heaven because Mr. Fantastic's device that was keeping him alive on the mortal plane was preventing his friend from truly moving on. After going through the 5 stages of grief, the door was finally opened, but when the Fantastic Four stepped through it, they weren't brought to heaven, but rather a step beyond. As they floated through abstract space, the team came upon a door, and inside of it was a rather ordinary-looking house with a man sitting at a drawing table. This is the one above all, and he's clearly meant to resemble the legendary comic book artist Jack Kirby, but we know that fellow comic icon Stan Lee is up there as well, since Kirby got a phone call about their next collaboration. To demonstrate his power, Kirby erased the damage that was done to Reed's face in their fight with Dr. Doom, brings Ben back to the status quo by turning him back into the Thing, and then sends them home. Now, we've seen the one above all appear as Jack Kirby again in Secret Agent Deadpool, but they're also known to appear in other forms, such as this homeless man in Sensational Spider-Man, and also this golden being constantly switching between male and female in Thanos the Infinity Finale. Yet despite the other guises, it's clear that the whole comic book artist thing is a big deal in the world of Marvel Comics, which makes a lot of sense considering that they are comics after all. This was dived into a little bit more with the series Avengers No Road Home, where Nyx, the Greek goddess of the night, was seeking the primal source of all things, and she found it in Long Island, New York. Outside of a spooky-looking house was a car with a license plate reading SML-JKK. This is clearly meant to represent Stanley Martin Lieber, the real name of Stan Lee, and Jack Kurtzberg Kirby, who we discussed earlier. To further add to things, both Stan Lee and Jack Kirby once lived in Long Island, and the Marvel Universe does pretty much revolve around New York. After phasing through the door of the house, the Vision was drawn to life inside of an endless white void. As Nyx described it, this is the dwelling space of the fundamental creative force of their reality, the one above all others. When Vision inquired about this space existing in Long Island, Nyx remarked that the house has many doors. Vision discovered that in this world, he could create windows into reality that look suspiciously like comic panels, unleashing Marvel characters from all throughout space and time in order to fight Nyx. Vision exclaims that this is the House of Ideas, a name that longtime comic readers will instantly recognize as a title that Marvel referred to themselves by in the past. Clearly, Vision and his swarm of heroes won the battle, but let's rewind a little bit. With Nyx saying that there are many doors into the House of Ideas, I get the idea that we saw one of those in the Fantastic Four storyline. Well, either that or the room that the one above all was in was just a step above the House of Ideas, which kinda makes it like it's attic. See, the house is this endless void of white, which can easily be interpreted as the white paper that comics are drawn on. DC Comics has a similar idea in the form of the source. Maybe the house is the paper that we can see the one above all drawing on. Before we get too much further, I should probably give a shout out to the gutter space that's seen in the Gwenpool comics. While this does look like a white void that's filled with comic pages, this is separate from the House of Ideas, and is said to be the blank space between comic panels. It's all of this stuff stuff. But back to the main subject. If we can interpret the home that's seen in the Fantastic Four comic as the attic of the House of Ideas, does it have a basement? Okay, so get this. The Infinity Stones are very powerful artifacts, and as I mentioned in my previous video about how they work, the stones literally represent their aspect of the universe. The Time Stone doesn't just have mastery over time, the stone is time itself. That's why in the comics, these stones explicitly cannot be used to destroy themselves, regardless of what Endgame had to say about it. If you destroy the stones, then the universe literally cannot exist. Well, in comics created after I made that video, we learned that each of the stones has an entire world inside of them. For example, inside of the Power Stone is the Arena, a realm of eternal contests and champions, an otherworldly proving ground for creation's most robust combatants. As a fun aside, the Arena is also the home of Dynamis, the physical embodiment of one of the strongest forces in all of Marvel, the Power Cosmic. Well, inside of the Reality Stone is a realm called the World Pool, an endless world of long boxes that are filled to the brim with comic books, which is what my office is starting to turn into.
This is a lot heavier than it looks.
But hey, at least I bag and board all of my comics. Ugh, those loose copies make my inner collector just cringe. It does make sense that the makeup of the Reality Stone would be comics because, well, that is the reality in this existence. While the House of Ideas is the fundamental creative force, the World Pool is the result, an interconnected patchwork of thousands upon thousands of ideas and stories brought to life.
In my opinion, this is all really cool stuff, and I like seeing the meta workings of the Marvel Universe being more cemented. However, I don't think that we're going to be seeing much more of these realms being explored soon, because the more you play with these ideas, the less impactful they end up being. But at the very least, I hope you ended up watching this video and saying, neat. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? And if you enjoyed this, then you might also like the video that I did about the secrets of the DC Multiverse. I went pretty in depth, and I am very proud of how that video turned out, so maybe give that a watch. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.